Let's get back to the economy and the cost of living. And there was relief all round today when the Australian stock market performed well after amassing losses of almost 6% over the previous 2 days. As the Reserve Bank kept interest rates on hold, the ASX closed up almost half a percentage point. As I put it to Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor, there was a sense of relief.
Yeah, there's no question it's a time of great uncertainty, Chris, and we're certainly seeing that in capital markets. I think households feel the same way as they struggle to make ends meet after the sharp increases in prices they've seen in the last couple of years, the collapse in their real disposable incomes. There will be some relief that there was no increase in interest rates today, although the Reserve Bank put out a very sober statement, and it's clear that there is a long way to go before we beat inflation in this country. Indeed, they increased their forecast for inflation and said it's going to take longer to get inflation back to the target range, which means we can expect interest rates to be higher for longer. So there's a lot of pain, sadly, still to come. And frankly, we have a government that hasn't taken the bull by the horns and fixed this problem. We're really at the back of the pack in beating inflation, and that means we're stuck with interest rates higher for longer.
Yeah, I think that's the surprising thing about what the Reserve Bank Governor has said today, because we saw that dramatic fall in the share market yesterday and of course, the Friday preceding it. So you're starting to hear people talking about, you know, sort of economic strife, even recession in the future, and that's the environment normally you'd be looking to cut rates. So rates on hold for today, but the Reserve Bank Governor is saying that they're going to stay at this level for a long while. She's saying we shouldn't be expecting an interest rate cut anytime soon. Is that concerning?
Well, she's making the point that you've got to beat inflation first. And this is the real problem we've got ourselves into now. And it's why the government, I think, has had it completely wrong. If you can't beat inflation, that has to be your obsessive focus. But we've really got problems now on two fronts. We've also got economic growth problems with our household recession, 5 quarters where GDP per capita hasn't gone forward. And so having not beaten inflation and being really at the back of the pack compared to other countries around the world in beating inflation, we've got a very serious problem in this country. It does mean interest rates being higher for longer, but it also means we're seeing more business insolvencies. Households are really struggling to make ends meet, and we've seen increases in unemployment and a forecast from the Reserve Bank that we'll continue to see further rises in unemployment in the coming months.
Can we dodge a recession?
Well, look, a hard landing, you've got to say, in the United States is looking far more likely than it was 48 hours ago, and that will obviously have an impact on us. If the government had beaten inflation already, then we'd be in a position where we could work harder on avoiding a recession. But we're not in that position. We're stuck with this higher for longer. The forecasts have gone up. The other thing the Reserve Bank has said is that government spending is contributing to the problem. We know that is absolutely right. Since they put out their last forecast before the budget, they've had to adjust them since the budget, which has spending growth at 16% in the next 2 years. There's not many households that can increase their spending at 16% over the next 2 years. It's way too fast for the inflation we're facing, and the result is the Reserve Bank is left having to obsessively focus on bringing that inflation down with a lot of pain for Australians.
Well, there's a lot of worry here because a lot of people are feeling mortgage stress already. They're being told today you can forget about getting mortgage relief for perhaps a year now, when people were thinking it might only be a few months away. Of course, the other factors in cost of living continue to escalate, power prices especially, and we face a federal election next year. It'll certainly be next year now. There's no way known Labor could bring it on before the end of this year, you would think. And they need to rein in their spending, don't they? And they'll find that hard in the lead up to an election.
Well, we know how to beat inflation, Chris. This is the point. This is homegrown inflation. Our domestic inflation is running at over 3 times imported inflation. The Reserve Bank Governor has made that point, and has made the point that our own spending, as I said, is contributing to that inflation. But we know how to beat it. You've got to get back to basics. We saw that in the 70s and the 80s when we did beat inflation. Both sides of politics played a role in beating that inflation, and that means reining in government spending, just as households are having to to make ends meet right now. Governments should not spending money on unnecessary things like grants to the CFMEU, like spin units inside the Treasurer's Department. But it also means making sure your population growth is in line with your housing growth. And that certainly hasn't been the case over the last 2 years, with population growth of over 1.2 million people in just 2 years. I mean, these are the things contributing to inflation, which is far from beaten, at the same time as our economy has been going backwards in GDP per capita terms. And more pain, it seems, in the pipeline for hardworking families as a result of what we saw today.